pray for in the next 4 years. Let's pray that Councillor Carr enjoy her time as a top vote getter, and we are humbled by it. For those fans of the most recent Muppet movie, there's Councillor Carr, and then there's spacebar, 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 the rest of us. Let's pray that Councillor Reimer stops telling me to Google things, because, hey, Bing and Yahoo deserve equal product placement in this chamber. Let's pray that Councillor Tang does not go into withdrawal, not sitting beside me anymore, as he heads off into the wide world outside the chamber. Somehow I think he'll be fine, and of course we wish him well and thank him for his service. Let's pray that Councillor Meg's election hockey beard will soon be shaved off after making it back onto council. That was a close shave, you got to admit. Let's pray that Councillor Jang continues to drive. Let's pray that Councillor Jang continues to drive the two nicest cars to City Hall, neither of which are electric, and thus continue his support for the car driver. Because heck, someone in this chamber must try to love driving in the city. Let's pray that Councillor Louis spend more time at FCM events in Toronto, because it makes it much easier for some of us to protest the city's finances when he's not around. Point of order, point of this, point of that. Let's pray that Councillor Deal and I keep running into each other at distilleries and pubs and craft beer tasting lounges, because, well, it's good for the industry. Maybe not our livers, but it's good for the industry. Let's pray that Councillor Stevenson, the only man with the actual credentials to do the real praying around here, continues to postulate on whatever subject moves him, because God knows, as does Councillor Stevenson, that his partner Gary shouldn't be getting all the limelight. Let's pray that Mayor Robertson continue to redacted. Well, that's strange. I'm sure there was something on this paper when I came in here, but something happened here. And of course, finally, let's pray that Councillor Ball continue to give me looks across the room that either mean I've gone too far with one of my rants, or perhaps I've nailed it. Either way, it's good to have Councillor Ball here, and I do believe she's giving me one of those looks right now. So I will wrap it up, and have a great holiday season, everybody, and thanks for the last 4 years, and here's the next 4. The last 3, 4. Thanks.
Thank you. Please be seated. Okay, Madam Clerk, may we have the roll call, please?
Mayor Robertson's in the chair. Councillor Louis has a leave of absence for civic business. Councillor Stevenson. Present. Councillor Dion. Here. Councillor Jang. Here. Councillor Reimer. Here. Councillor Meggs. Here. Councillor Tang. Here. Councillor Ball. Present. Councillor Affleck. Here. And Councillor Carr. Here. Mr. Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk, and again, welcome everyone to City Council Chambers for our council meeting, November 25th, 2014. The last meeting of this council since our election on the 15th, and the inauguration of the next council, which will be 10 of 11 of us on December the 8th. So this is our last council meeting in this as this grouping, and we are going to start with first order of business, which is related to in-camera. Council is required to meet in camera later this week. The reasons and authority under the Vancouver Charter are listed in the updated agenda. Would someone like to move that motion, please? Councillor Stevenson, Councillor Carr seconds. All those in favour? Any opposed? That carries. And we are on to going through the minutes from our past set of meetings. The first from our regular council meeting of October the 28th. Any corrections to those minutes? Councillor Deal moves adoption, seconded by Councillor Jang. All those in favour? Any opposed? And that carries. The second set of minutes is from the council meeting that followed the Standing Committee on Planning, Transportation and Environment, October 29th, 2014. Any corrections to those? Mover, Councillor Deal, seconded by Councillor Carr. All those in favour? Any opposed? And that carries. And we need a motion to go into Committee of the Whole. Councillor Stevenson, Councillor Jang seconds. All those in favour? Opposed and carried. And Council will now consider our consent agenda items. We have 4 administrative reports on the agenda for consideration. And Council may adopt the recommendations for these reports collectively in a single motion. Does any member wish to hold any of the reports for debate, separate vote, or because of conflict of interest? Seeing no names on the queue or arms waving in the air, I'll ask for someone to move. Councillor Deal will move adoption of the recommendations in those 4 reports. And any debate on those 4 sets of recommendations? All those in favour? Any opposed? And that carries unanimously. So we have officially approved the 4 administrative reports that are in the agenda, and those are approved. The recommendations on consent: approval of council initiative for Commercial Drive BIA renewal. The second is the authorization to receive operating and staffing funds from BC Housing for the Evelyn Solar Centre and the Gathering Place. The third is the Fall 2014 Cultural Infrastructure Grant allocations. And the fourth is the 2014 third quarter capital budget adjustments and closeouts. Thanks to all the staff who put all those reports and recommendations together for council, and all the good work done to have clear and concise reporting that did not elicit feisty debate in council. Well done to all those who've worked on those reports. And we will now move on to bylaws. First, we need a motion to rise from Committee of the Whole. Councillor Stevenson moves, Councillor Jang seconds. All those in favour? Any opposed? And that carries. And we need a motion to adopt the report of the Committee of the Whole. Councillor Deal moves, and a seconder. Councillor Carr. All those in favour? Any opposed? And that carries. So we're on to our bylaws. We have bylaws 1 through 15 on the agenda for consideration by council. Does any member wish to hold any of these bylaws for debate, separate vote, or because of conflict of interest? Councillor Carr.
Yes, I'd like to hold bylaw 13 and 15 for debate.
Okay, 13 and 15. All right. And so we'll hold 13 and 15 on bylaws. Don't have anyone else on the queue. We will just check in on bylaws 3 and 6, our public hearing enactments from a hearing that was on December the 17th, 2013. And Councillor Tang, you were not at that hearing. Have you reviewed the proceedings of that hearing, and will you be voting on bylaws 3 and 6? That is a no. Okay, I think that's it. We have 2 of us on bylaw 12. Councillor Meggs and I were not in attendance for the July 8th public hearing on bylaw 12. Councillor Meggs, have you reviewed the portion of the proceedings which you missed? Will you be voting on the enactment?
I haven't, Mr.
That's a no, and neither will I, nor will I. So we're on to bylaw 13, which is being held. But on bylaw 13, I'll just clarify, Councillors Ball, Reimer, and Stevenson were not in attendance for some of those dates. Those hearing dates were February 27th, 28th, March 1st, 27th, April 4th, April 5th. And at the regular council meeting on April the 17th, both Councillors Ball and Reimer advised they had reviewed portions of the proceedings which they missed, and they are therefore eligible to vote on that bylaw. Councillor Stevenson, have you reviewed the proceedings in relation to this bylaw? And will you be voting on its enactment? That's a no. Okay. So I'll ask first for someone to move adoption of bylaws 1 through 13, and we're holding the 2. We're holding the 2 that was it 11 and 13? 13 and 15. Okay. So 1 through 12 and 14. A mover. Councillor Jang moves 1 through 12 and 14. And any debate? All those in favor? Any opposed? And that carries. So we'll go back to bylaw 13 for Councillor Carr. You have questions on bylaw 13?
Do I have to do this again? Have you got my mic on?
Your mic's on.
Great, thank you. Yes, I just have a couple of questions on this that it did not make sense to me, so I have to ask these questions in order to be able to vote. In terms of the bylaw 13, I am, number one, questioning whether all of the conditions for approval of a CD1 bylaw are met are being met in this particular proposal. So in terms of my first question, the height that is being specified as the maximum height in the condition for approval is 65.53 meters, or 214.99 feet. I know that there have been some changes, and that have been proposed by the proponent. And is the height that is in the new building at 21 stories under the 214.99 feet?
Exactly the same as what council approved in the zoning bylaw for the development application that came in. So yes, it is.
Okay. Is the height a matter? Mr. Mayor, maybe I should ask a question that is more a point of order. I understand that there's a court case that's going on, and I'm unclear about the extent to which I can ask questions around specifics that might be in the court case, which is, I think, in session even today.
We'll have Madam City Manager clarify any issues, legal issues related to the court proceedings.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor and Council. So, Councillor Carr, my suggestion is if you don't need to refer to the court case, but if you have a question, you've asked about the height, and Mr. Jackson has been clear that the development is within the height. So if your question relates to something else might have been said in the court case, you don't need to go there. You've asked your question, is it within the height, and that's the factual answer. I think if you just stick to the facts, I think we'll be safe. If we get into sort of arguments and stuff, then I'll pop up and just say we should take it in camera.
Okay, thank you. Well, is it the case that in the court case this height is being disputed?
So I think that's a question that is not in order. I think, Councillor, you have to, I think if you wish to vote on the bylaw, you need to try and clarify the facts that you're uncertain of.
I am
The court case is a whole separate thing, but Mr. Jackson is here to, reassure you and clarify any questions you may have about the bylaw itself.
Right. Okay. My questions, and again, this is a point of order, my questions are around the issue of whether the facts are being disputed, that Mr. Jackson has just given me one fact, but I'm questioning whether those facts are being disputed in court, and if so, how we should proceed. If I should refer this to a future meeting, if we go into camera, but I do have questions about height and density.
Councillor Meggs, you have a point of order?
Well, all of Councillor Carr's concerns may be relevant, but given that she herself was present at the public hearing and had an ample opportunity to canvass all these matters, according to the records we're just looking at here, and because the matter is before the courts, I think it would be appropriate and incumbent on her to canvass these matters privately with the city's legal counsel and the director of planning, and not put council in the position of having to try to determine on the fly whether or not her line of questioning is appropriate or within bounds or any of that sort of thing. There's been ample opportunity, even since the election, for her to probe these matters and to clarify and satisfy her own mind about this. It's actually quite extraordinary, as we all know, to debate a bylaw on enactment. It may be possible, it may be in extraordinary circumstances desirable, but this matter was well canvassed. Councillor Carr had every opportunity at the public hearing to ask any questions and concerns she had. The public record is there for her to review. And I'm very uneasy about any process which stands up now and perhaps inadvertently does legal work for one side or the other in a court case that's happening in another forum. So I would just urge Councillor Carr to withdraw her concerns on this bylaw, revisit them with the city manager and our legal counsel, and she has every opportunity to come back at future council meetings and bring up any matter that's of interest to her. But to do this in this fashion strikes me as highly dubious at best. So I would urge her to withdraw her objections on this bylaw and find out the information she's seeking by a more appropriate course.
Well, Mr. Mayor, if I may just add, the only thing that I would add is that it's not uncommon, in the city doing its regular business, that we are challenged. And in the bringing forward of a bylaw for enactment where there is litigation present, our legal services department provide advice to the director of planning in this case, and they would not allow us to bring this forward for a vote if they felt that that would put the city at significant risk. So, notwithstanding there is litigation ongoing, Councillor, I think the fact that this has been brought forward you can assume that it's been thoroughly vetted by legal services. They understand the risks of what's going on in the litigation, and that they feel very comfortable, as does the Director of Planning, bringing this forward for a final enactment vote.
Okay. Councillor
May I
Carr?
proceed with my questions?
You may. Noting the hearing and consideration, I think you would need to understand the legal risk.
I understand. And to the point raised by Councillor Meggs, there have been changes in the form of development since the public hearing, and I am questioning whether those changes in the form of development meet the conditions that we put on the approval of the CD1 bylaw. I have asked questions of staff. I still have questions, although they've answered them. I think it's highly improper that we are actually dealing with this while a court case is going on, questioning the very issues around whether this development project is meeting the conditions of approval of the CD1 bylaw. I'm very uncomfortable about this process. I don't feel free to ask those questions, nor do I think staff is free to answer, given that it is in court. So I'm looking for a way forward where I can have resolution around questions in my mind to be able to vote on this issue. And those questions will mean discussing things that are being disputed in court. Okay, well, you've answered one about the height. Is the bulk of the building larger in the changes that have been made subsequent to the public hearing?
The applicant's changes to the development application responded exactly to the council direction at the public hearing and is in conformance with the bylaw that is before you today.
Okay, so the question I have is the bulk larger? There was indeed a direction in the conditions of approval to change the mass and bulk so that it wouldn't appear so bulky. So I am questioning whether the bulk of the building is, of one of the main building is larger or not.
The application that is before, the rezoning that is before you today and the form of development that is before you today has responded to the concerns of City Council at its public hearing and has responded specifically to the direction that Council gave it back at the public hearing.
Oh, okay. It's a total residential area changed.
The total residential area has had some minor changes to the square footage, that's correct.
An increase in the square footage,
Around
13,000 square feet by my calculations.
Yeah, again, there have been some minor changes to the amount of square footage of residential.
Would the consideration of changes in the square footage of residential space have any implication for the calculation of the community amenity contributions, and would that affect our ability to be able to vote on this bylaw?
No.
Okay. Yeah, those are my questions.
Okay, that's it for questions. So I'll need a mover for Councillor Meggs. Did you have just a point of order there? Or you? Okay, we will move to Councillor Affleck. Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just sort of follow up to those. So, I mean, I guess it's curious to me that we have, that there's more units. How does that work? We're not increasing the height, and you're saying the bulk isn't too much bigger, but where do these magical units come from? How does that work in a building?
Through the chair to Councillor Affleck, as a result of the change to the floor-to-floor calculations, the applicant was able to increase the number of residential units with the, they used to have 10-foot floors or 9-foot floors, and now they're 8.6 or whatever, so they were able to get more residential units.
Is that common that that happens after it's been approved in the public hearing and in developments in the city?
Through the chair, it's very common for a development application to change in terms of the number of units That's why we don't approve generally the number of units, because there are a lot of different factors, including responding to the direction of council on some of the built form issues. So we measure things in terms of total density, square footage, square meterage, and height in terms of meters.
The fact that, as Councillor Carr sort of said, that coming to council today, there's a court case happening. What is the impact of? What would the impact in delaying this till following the court case for this? What would be the impact of that for us to delay this?
So, Councillor Affleck, we put applications before council when the applicant has responded to all the conditions associated with the development permit, together with the rezoning application that has been considered at a council. Those are a number of very often complex legal agreements. They've also the change in the built form in association with the direction received by council. So we put it forward when it's ready. We feel that the applicant has met all the conditions, both in the development permit as well as the bylaw that's before you right now.
The additional square footage, whatever it is, Councillor Carr said 13,000 square feet. I don't know where if that number is accurate 100%, but would that not give us potential, or could have we not received more CAC value given the additional square footage that we received in this building? Is it lost CACs that we're seeing here?
Through the chair, this is a very large building, and so the changes to the built form are so minor in nature in terms of any changes to the CAC. The application would not be before you today if all departments, including real estate services, did not feel comfortable that the application had responded in all forms to the bylaw that was before you at the public hearing, together with the form of development.
Do you have any idea what additional percentage square footage there is in this development since the public hearing?
The application before you today and the bylaw that's before you today, there has been absolutely no increase in total square footage from the overall square footage than the bylaw that was considered at the public hearing.
Okay, so that number that Councillor Carr said is, I'm confused because she says it's 13,000.
No, I'm saying overall density that was approved in the development.
Oh, I see. So you're saying the 13,000, you just moved it? Is that what happened?
There's been no, if one went up, one went down, so that there's been no overall increase in density since the bylaw that you approved back at the public hearing.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I've got Councillor Carr and Councillor Meggs on the queue. I'll go to Councillor Meggs. Questions?
Mr. Jackson, you've answered a number of questions here today. At what point was the bylaw crystallized and the answers to all these questions available to anyone who sought them? In other words, at what point did staff finalize what it intended to put before council at bylaw enactment, which would make it possible for someone to check at that time?
The bylaw before council today is exactly the same bylaw that would have been included in the original package that was sent to council for referral. The draft bylaw was included at that point, and it certainly would have been included as part of the public hearing.
So
there have been no changes to it.
It's a matter of the integrity of the process that the material put in front of us at enactment coincides exactly with what was passed to the public.
That's correct.
And the issue, you've talked about the height, which is an absolute number that's easily determined, and we've been heard questions about square footage. Does the term bulk have any meaning in professional planning terms?
It does insofar as the development permit is concerned, but in terms of the actual bylaw, there was no requirement in the bylaw for a certain bulk. That being said, as council did direct us to go back through the development permit and make changes, and the changes that are before you today in the form of development respond to the concerns of council at the time.
And I guess with the issue of bulk, more so than perhaps height, there are subjective reactions to, I mean, if a building is painted matte black, in my perception, it's bulkier than if it was painted white. Is it fair to say that architectural treatments and so on can change and alter the perceived bulk of a building?
Through the chair, yes, that's correct, as well as other ways that we can actually physically reduce the bulk of a tower and put it into other elements of the building as well.
And that was, the developer was required to respond to that general concern by council in that regard as well, and that's reflected in
the form of development that's also before you today. That's correct.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Carr to You have further questions?
I'd like to move a referral motion, and that this motion be considered at the first council meeting following the resolution of the current court case.
Okay, let's have the clerk got that down. So we, speaking to that motion, Councillor Affleck.
Well, I'll support the referral. I think that it's prudent for us to, I think we've all received quite a lot of emails regarding this development, and I think delaying a month or so till we come back, or just following whatever the decision at the court, would be a prudent decision in order for the people of the city who are concerned that there is some questions about this, whether or not they are accurate or not. It's how we are perceived as a council and how we govern the city, and so I don't see the challenge in delaying a little bit for this development as we wait the outcome of the court case. So I'll support the referral.
Okay, Councillor Carr, you're back on the queue, but you just moved. Okay, I'll go to Councillor Jang.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I was thinking about, it seems like a good idea on the surface of things to delay it and see how a court case comes out. But Councillor Meigs raised something that concerns me greatly, and the fact that in so doing, are we not aiding and abetting one side of a court case or another? And I think that's a real consideration. So I will not be supporting the referral. Thank you.
And Councillor Carr, did you want to go speak?
Oh, do you want me to wait till others have spoken?
Oh, why don't I give you the closing then? Councillor Reimer?
This is a pretty routine procedure, and all of the tests of the bylaw have been met. We have a public hearing, we pass or don't. But in order for there to be a bylaw, we must pass something. The question before us today is whether the bylaw matches what we passed at public hearing, and we have heard from expert staff that it does, and certainly my read of it is that it does. The question of whether or not if folks have money to bring an issue to court, we should delay our proper procedure is it's a fairly sticky one that would probably involve at the least a legal briefing, but since Councillor Carr has not afforded us any heads up on this intention of hers, I'm not privy to that legal briefing. So in the absence of that, I have to go with the rules of natural justice, which would say that we proceed with our normal procedure and that the court proceeds with its normal procedure. And at some point in the future, the two of them will meet. I would also note that it's been, and I believe I was one of the more fervent believers that the building needed some significant changes. It's been 2.5 years since the public hearing. I'm guessing there was a year or possibly more before that the building was in development. Like any standard of natural justice here has been tested in terms of the amount of time that this has already taken, and I just can't see how that's served by delaying it further based on the speculation on what might happen in a court case. So I don't support the referral. Again, if I had been given some kind of notice that allowed me to seek legal advice, I might come to a different conclusion, but in the absence of that, I do have to go with the natural justice.
Okay, Councillor Meigs.
There is a group that takes the city to court and is successful, then the city will have to respond by making good according to the court's decision on whatever the verdict is. We're not at that point. And, I think anybody involved, that the prudent course would be to uphold the processes that we have in place here, respect the advice that we've got from staff, and know that there'll be a decision at some point in the courts that will determine once and for all whether or not the issues raised by those folks are valid or not. And at that point, there'll have to be changes made to bring it in line if their position is upheld. That's how it works, in my opinion. And if we send a signal that any filing of a court case is likely to paralyze anything that goes on at the city till the court case is resolved, my hunch is that we won't have much workload here and our meeting schedule will decline quite a bit. So I don't think it's wise. I don't think it's wise. As I understand the suit, and of course Councillor Carr hasn't shared any of this with me, but perhaps I just don't read the papers closely enough. If the city's party to a suit, then the city should not, we should not impair the city's perspective at this point by changing a course which we believe will meet the test of judicial review. If it doesn't, then the city will have to take steps to bring it in line, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So the referral motion is actually at risk of doing somebody's legal work for them here in council, as opposed to having them do it in front of the court where they decided to go in the first place.
Okay, Councillor Ball.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think confusion as to what the city's responsibility is, both in the public and perhaps in the chamber. And I'm just wondering if we could get a confirmation from Madam City Manager. As Councillor Meg says, as I believe, whatever the courts decide becomes the law which the city must uphold. So if a decision goes against the city must uphold that regardless of what bylaw has been passed. If the city's position is upheld, the city, again, must uphold that law that has been passed. So I just wanted to make sure that I have this correct and that the city manager could confirm that.
Madam City Manager.
Mayor and Council, yes, Councillor Ball, I can confirm that, you know, these things are not uncommon. If we go to court and the judge rules, and that's the last, if we decide not to appeal, or at the end of the legal process, the courts will give the city the required direction as to, you know, whether the bylaw continues to stand or what might have to happen or not. And so I think, as I said earlier, the fact that our legal services group are allowing us to bring this forward for enactment, they've done a careful assessment of those risks, and the developer also understands the risks, you know, as do the proponents who are bringing the litigation. But we feel comfortable presenting this to you for enactment, and that the risks of whatever a court decision could be are within the realm of responsible fiduciary activity by the city.
Okay, and we're back to Councillor Carr. Closing comments.
Yes, thanks very much. Yes, I've moved this referral motion, not because I am stopping this process, but that I'd like to delay this decision as part of the decision-making of council. We don't need to deal with it today. I mean, there are, you know, when these issues come forward is, I think, a matter of staff putting them on the agenda. It's our right to be able to say, look, I think that we need more information before we make that decision. And in my mind, I think we need a resolution of the court case. I think we need to be able to explore more fully the issues that are being brought to play at the court case, which I'm inhibited from asking about, and our staff are inhibited from answering. Because it is in court. So I think for a more fulsome discussion of whether or not, and this is what the issue is, whether or not the conditions of approval for a CD1 bylaw change have been met, given that the proposal itself has changed. It's changed in its nature. And the issues are around the height and the bulk, because we gave specific instructions on those in the CD1 conditions of approval. So I am asking for your support in this referral.
Okay, that's it for debate. I'll call the question on the referral. All those in favor of referral can now vote on their screens. Okay. All the votes are tallied, 10 total votes, 2 in favor and 8 in opposition. So the referral motion does not carry. And we're back to the main motion. Actually, we didn't have a motion moved. Councillor Deal will move motion. Any debate on the motion bylaw? So we will now vote on the, we need a seconder, sorry. Councillor Jang, seconder on that bylaw 13. And everyone can now vote. Sorry. Okay, back to the other screen. Councillor Affleck.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I'll support this. I think that staff have answered the questions. I think it's challenging for the public when they're not in the room here to hear the answers from staff. And as Councillor Reimer said, that this meets the criteria that was approved at the public hearing, and staff have reassured us that there is nothing unusual or suspect here, that the questions that did come up that Councillor Carr and myself asked were answered and clearly, and we have to, of course, respect the advice of staff when it comes to these things. So I will support this, and I just think that we could have perhaps given a bit more time to the people of the city, but I'll support this because I feel staff have provided us with the answers we need today. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Reimer.
One question probably for the city manager. During the earlier debate, Councillor Carr alleged that she had been, I believe the word she used was inhibited from asking questions of staff regarding this matter and the legal issues. Is that the case? Were there efforts made to ask questions about the legal issues that were not provided for in camera?
In this open council session, she felt inhibited of asking questions. And I think what I tried to reassure all of council is you can always ask factual questions of staff at a situation like this. You know, was the building bigger than the bylaw? Did you add residential units? How did those get added? Because those are just fact-based questions and they're available for everybody to see. To ask questions about strategy around court cases and what the other side said or didn't is not an appropriate venue for that. But I think, with respect, Councillor Carr, I thought your sense of being inhibited asking questions was about this session, and I hope you felt reassured and got your questions asked.
Okay, thank you very much for the clarification.
Next up, Councillor Meggs.
And my point was the same, because I do feel Councillor Carr is not inhibited from asking questions to the city's legal counsel about any matter before the city legally, and could do so freely, but can't do so for obvious reasons in council. So there may be a misapprehension in the public that she's not able to ascertain what's going on. I would say, in fact, she has full access to any information she needs on this matter.
Okay, Councillor Carr.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I feel quite able to ask questions that are fact-based, and I ask those questions. What I am not able to ask about or to have a discussion around is whether there are alternate opinions now before a court around those same questions. And so I don't believe that those questions can be asked nor debated until the court case is over. So for that reason, I will be voting against this.
Okay, that's it for speakers to the motion. Bylaw 13, I'll call the question. Everyone can now vote on Bylaw 13. Okay, the votes are all in. 10 total votes, 9 in favor and 1 in opposition. So that motion carries on Bylaw 13. And we have concluded on that. And we move to Bylaw 15. The final bylaw that was held for debate, separate vote. Councillor Carr, did you have questions on Bylaw 15?
Yes, thank you. My understanding is that we are dealing in Bylaw 15 with the amendment of the False Creek North Official Development Plan, and in terms and it's arising primarily, well, anyway, it's related to land use in Area 5B West, but the new figures are what concerns me, and why they are added in. Those new figures include figures that deal with the park, so something that we haven't discussed at the council in terms of the fact that we've made a decision around Area 5B West, but not the park themselves. So my question is that in putting those changes, first of all, what are the changes in, especially Lot 9, are related to what was in the official development plan and what is being put forward now?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Kevin McNaney, Assistant Director of Planning for Downtown. Thank you, Councillor Carr. Through the Chair, the figure in question is figure 9B, which is a basic movement figure across Falls Creek North in the official development plan. There were some changes to that figure as a result of the approval of 5B West and 5B East, and those include adding a bike lane on Nelson Street, adding a bike path on Concord's approved development on the adjacent site 5B East, and adding the sidewalk on the north side of the Pacific adjacent to 5B East. So there were no changes to that diagram to Lot 9, or the future Creekside Park extension, as a result of this enactment. That diagram remains as is from 1990,
right.
the original development plan.
Yes, can I just ask if, because that is park, I understand, thank you for that clarification, that these are changes arising out of decisions made at council around 5B West and 5B East. Because it is a park, are we circumventing any process that would require us to consult with the park board or to have the park board's input on any changes to Lot 9B?
Absolutely not, Councillor. That park is underway. We're collaborating with the park board and staff and commissioners and the public.
Right.
We do have clear direction from council to expedite that park, and there is not a design yet complete for that park. That diagram just reflects basic principles of movement in the park area.
Okay, so they would not be decisions that the park board would come to, they would be decisions that the city would come to?
The park design would go through the park board for their approval when it's designed.
When it's designed. And so the changes we're making now don't inhibit their ability to design in any particular way?
No, they don't. As I mentioned, those movement decisions were in the official development plan from 1990, which had extensive consultation.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, looks like it's it for questions. I need a motion on the floor. Someone want to move? Did we have a mover? Councillor Ball will move. Any debate? Jump on the queue. No debate. I'll call the question. All those in favor of bylaw 15? Motion moving the recommendations. And now vote on screen. Okay, 10 votes are in. All 10 are in favor. So that bylaw is approved by council. And we have concluded on the bylaws. Thanks to staff for your work to bring those forward and clarify through your questions, and to all those behind the scenes on the bylaws, thank you and congratulations. We are on now to an administrative motion. We have two administrative motions, on the agenda, which are to be moved by Councillor Jang and seconded by Councillor Reimer. Any discussion of those two administrative motions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, the administrative motions. Any opposed? And those carry unanimously. Thank you. And we're on to motions on notice. We have one motion on notice, which is recognizing Lillian To, which was submitted by Councillor Louis at the regular council meeting on October 28th, our last council meeting. In Councillor Louis' absence, Councillor Tang, who had seconded, will move. Councillor Jang will second. And I'll invite Councillor Tang to introduce the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think there's more fitting for me this time to introduce the motion, as this would be my last motion and my last meeting. So as you see, the title is Recognizing Lillian To, and it was actually written by Councilor Louis, and Councilor Louis is away for civic business. I'm not going to go into the detail about success and how success was founded by, partly by Maggie Yip, one of our former councilor. But I just want to dive right into what did Miss Lillian To do. Lillian To was a social worker who had served on the original staff team when success was found. And she became the Chief Executive Director in 1988. I'm just giving this information on top of what's said in the motion. And at the time, took over, when Lillian To took over, at a time when success was experiencing unprecedented organizational growth due to a near doubling of the number of immigrants from Hong Kong, Taiwan, as well as students from China. Well, now success developed into taking care of more than just the immigrants from Asia, also from immigrants from all over the world. Anyway, during Lillian To time, she also saw the opening of the Success Simon K.Y. Lee Senior Care Homes in 2001, that's 103 beds. The Health and Wellness Center in 2003, Daycare Center in 2003, serving 20 to 25 seniors per day, and the Harmony House Assist Living Residence in 2006, except she didn't quite see the whole thing in 2006 because of her sudden passing in July 2005. So just to sum this up, as our former Prime Minister Paul Martin said, in Lillian To's footsteps by providing dedicated and selfless service to others who strive to better themselves and our great country. So I think for Lillian To, I think her legacy, substantial legacy and achievements, making Vancouver a more inclusive city, free of racism, and creating mutual understanding and respect for all residents of Vancouver. And I think it is very well deserved to recognize. And this motion is to ask staff to report back the options available for the council, next council meeting, to find a place specifically, if it would be better if it's in Chinatown, on the options to identify an appropriate place or civic asset or street, and to be named in recognition of Lillian To and her lifetime achievements. So I hope this motion would get the unanimous support from the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tang. So to that motion, which is seconded by Councillor Jang, I have Councillor Carr on the queue to speak.
No, that was actually previous, which I'll raise in a second. It's not on this motion.
Okay. I'll go on Councillor Ball.
Yes, I'd just like to say how thrilled I am to see this motion here. A number of years ago, when I was working in the professional theatre, I was trying to open the theatre so that it could appear to be what the city was, a city of cultural harmony, and Lillian To was so incredibly helpful to me and to all the actors there, and introduced us to many artists in the Chinese community who were welcoming and supportive. And her assistance meant that we were able to go on and perform a number of these very, very special cultural fusion plays to hundreds of thousands of children across Canada. And indeed, I am eternally grateful to her for her introductions and her support for the arts. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Ball. And any more speakers on this motion? Don't have any on the queue. So we'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion, moved by Councillor Tang. Recognizing Lillian To, you can vote On screen now. And Councillor Stevenson, you want to try that again? Okay. Votes are in. No, Councillor Stevenson, you still haven't voted yet. You only get to vote once, though.
He was very enthusiastic.
Just click it once. There we go. Okay. 10 votes are in. Okay, there we go. 10 votes in, all in favor, unanimous approval for recognizing Lillian To. Thank you very much, Council, and Councillor Tang for bringing that forward, and also on to Councillor Louie for originally bringing that motion forward to Council. Okay, so we are... Point of order.
Previous vote around the administrative motions, but I don't believe we got to, I think it was hands, but we didn't get to vote on them because I intended to vote in opposition to the first one, and so we didn't have the chance to do that. Sorry that I'm bringing it up now, but I did have my name on the register.
Yeah, I did call the vote.
But it
wasn't on
by
screen.
hand, it wasn't on screen.
Yeah, we haven't...
Sorry, I was intending to vote no to administrative motion 1. I just didn't feel that there was the chance to, that's why I had I should have called a point of order, but that's what I put my name on the screen for at the time.
Okay, Madam Clerk, you want to clarify our procedure with respect to that?
Mr. Mayor, we did actually call the vote. True, we do have the system, and it's meant to be of assistance. We don't always use it, and typically for these motions, the administrative motions and short items, we don't actually use the voting system.
Okay. Well, can I move reconsideration of A1, please?
Madam Clerk, is that...
Given that the vote has taken place at this meeting, it is, and if the councillor wishes to reconsider, they may do so. Typically, it's done because new information has come to light, but there is a process for reconsidering within the procedure bylaw.
Okay.
It will require a seconder.
Do I have a seconder for that motion to reconsider administrative motion number 1? Councillor Affleck, and so why don't we go right to administrative motion number 1, and Councillor Carr, you want to speak to that?
Yes, thank you. It's just that although the numbering is different, my understanding is that CD1 bylaw 2, administrative motion 285 East 10th is in fact the Rise building, which is the matter that I had been questioning about in terms of the bylaw 13. So for the reasons I cited around my vote no for the bylaw 13, I'm still questioning the approval of the form of development at this point, and I would like to vote no on that.
Okay. Any other speakers to administrative? Sorry, did I call a question on reconsideration?
I'll call a question on reconsideration, yes.
Maybe just procedurally, just so we have that in the books. We had a mover and a seconder for reconsideration. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that carries. So we have heard from Councillor Carr on that motion, reconsideration of that motion. Any other speakers to administrative motion number 1, 2.0? No further speakers. I'll call the question. All those in favor of administrative motion number 1? And any opposed? Councillor?
to recuse?
No. Yeah, we did that.
Okay.
Yeah, so now we're voting on the motion again. And all those in favor of the motion itself, administrative motion number 1. Any opposed? Councillor Carr is opposed, and that motion carries.
No, we know we're missing 2.
Do you want,
Reimer?
are we going to vote on the screen this time?
Yeah, well, that was,
Okay, we'll make it official. So if everyone will vote on screen, please.
you're in, you're in.
Okay, and the votes are in. 10 votes, 9 in favor, 1 in opposition, and the motion carries. Okay, so we have concluded administrative motions and our motion on notice. We are now on to notice of motion, new business inquiries, and other matters. We have one item of new business, which is a request for leave of absence for civic business for Councillor Louie from this meeting. Would someone like to move that motion? Councillor Tang, and seconded by Councillor Deal. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that carries. And I will ask now if there are any other items of new business, notices of motion, inquiries, other matters that council members wish to raise. Councillor Carr, are you on the queue for? Don't have anyone with new business. Okay, so we'll move on to the last part of our meeting today, the last part of the last meeting of this council, and that is to recognize Councillor Tony Tang for all of his incredible work these past 3 years as a councillor. It's an opportunity for us to take a moment and recognize Councillor Tony Tang for his work in this chamber since 2011 and his tremendous service to the people of Vancouver. Everyone who knows Tony knows his irrepressible smile and sense of humor, his incredible work ethic, and his exacting attention to detail, and unwavering dedication to make our city more inclusive and welcoming for everyone. Tony has been a very strong voice for seniors, for small business owners, for home builders, contractors, and neighborhoods across the city, and in particular in historic Chinatown. He has served as a very important bridge to the Chinese community on behalf of council in many, many functions over these past 3 years. I think he has the FLOTA record for all time. 1 term of council, FLOTA dinners. And Tony was also instrumental in advancing Vancouver's first comprehensive age-friendly action plan, which certainly addresses the needs of our growing population of seniors. So a very important body of work supporting our seniors. I know you will be missed dearly by the Seniors Advisory Committee and your work there, and among many other places. We have been very fortunate on council, I think, to have your expertise around this table as an engineer and as a home builder. Many details that you understand about the industry, and also in your work as the former chair of the Board of Variance and understanding those processes. We will certainly miss your clever wit and familiar presence at City Hall as a member of council, and I'm confident, though, you'll continue to make all sorts of positive contributions to our city going forward in many new ways and forms for the years and decades to come. We have, it's been a real privilege, I know, on behalf of all of council, to work with you, Tony, for this term of office, and we look forward to continuing that work together in other ways. But this is really our opportunity to thank you for your service to our city as a councillor, and we have a special token of our appreciation for you if you would come forward, and we'll ask you to say a few words.
Should I take it first, or should I say a few words first? Really? Receive that first? Yeah, I guess so. It's a power drill. Maybe I just get my notes. Yeah.
Getting away. Oh, my goodness. Power drill.
much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much, Council. Everybody. Yeah, I'd like to say a few words just from my desk. It's growing a little attachment to it after 3 years. Hold that thought for a second. This is a very pleasant surprise. I didn't expect that, so thank you very much, Council, and thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. This will be my last council meeting, and I would like to take this opportunity to say what an incredible journey it has been. It was my real honor and privilege to serve the people of Vancouver for the past 3 years, and thank you for giving me that opportunity. For my supporters and my friends, I'm humble and thank you for your unwavering support. For the residents who did not vote for me, I'm sorry that I did not earn your vote, but thank you for coming out to vote. Thank you for the warm support from the Vancouver Chinese community and your encouragement. Thank you also to the Chinese media in the past 3 years for allowing me to reach out and engage with the community to talk about the actions and policies of the city. I will always appreciate your fair reporting and generosity of time. I will miss our wonderful staff. I will miss the lady who polishes the brass doors every day, the mail clerk, our assistants, and everyone all the way up to our, not limited to, but way to our city manager. Everyone is so essential to the functioning of our city. I would like to specifically thank our engineering manager, Peter Judd. Thank you for your responses well past midnight and taking action even on the weekend. You guys are a great bunch in the engineering department. I will miss you all. I would also like to thank the hardworking staff at the processing group of the planning department. I know it has not been an easy few months, and thank you for your dedication and tenacity. I surely will miss my colleagues in this chamber. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your forward-looking leadership. And for my teammates, thank you for your guidance, mentorship, and your friendship. I would also like to thank my colleagues from the other side of the table and the one next to me. Thank you for your civility and cordial relationship, and sometimes even laughing at my jokes. Finally, as I vacate this seat, I wish you all the best in the next 4 years. And thank you, Vancouver, for giving me the honor to serve you in the past 3 years. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you again, Tony, for those, as always, those wise and concise words. And we wish you all the best and a more relaxing time in the near term. But look forward to you being re-engaged in many other ways in the life of our city. So congratulations on a successful term in office, and all the best to you and your family. And we need a motion to adjourn this last meeting of our council, moved by Councillor Stevenson, second by Councillor Jang. Before I call the question, a huge thank you to all of council almost all of, other than Councillor Tang, will be back in short order on December the 8th when we are sworn in as the next council. But I think it's been a very productive term of council, and we look forward to continuing with lots of action in the 4 years ahead. And a big thanks as well to all of our staff who've done extraordinary work over this past term. It's been lots of challenges faced by our city, but an amazing array of accomplishments and progress in Vancouver that's been recognized all over the world. If you look at the awards that have been accruing over these past 3 years, reflected back on the city from all around the world, there's been some amazing accomplishments for our work, and recognition of that is good to see. So a big thanks to staff for all the hard work, often behind the scenes, unsung heroes of our city. Thanks for that contribution to all of our staff, and we look forward to the new term beginning in the days ahead. So thanks all, and call the question. All those in favor of adjournment? Any opposed? That carries, and this meeting and this term is adjourned, other than an in-camera meeting. One more meeting in camera that will start up right at 11 o'clock. Thanks all. Have a great day.